This will be over soon.
Okay, I want to bring the county government meeting to order for July. First up is Sam. It's all yours.
CLC.
All right, well, I'm Troy Weldey, Thunder Land Services, Sam Calhoun. So I just wanted to thank you for taking the time. Sam is managing a project for us that I actually think has benefits to both the county and the individual towns. And Sam is going to tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, so thanks again for having us today. I know we were supposed to come in June and we had to push it, so I appreciate the flexibility. CLC is next year to develop what we're calling a countywide conservation vision or a countywide open space plan. And so this is a priority that CLC set last year to help sort of focus and guide our land protection efforts around the county, whether it's forest land protection, farmland protection, things of that nature. Recreational lands, et cetera, so forth. To support that work, we applied for and successfully received a $75,000 grant from the Hudson River Estuary Program to develop the plans. So the plan is funded from our side, and it really strives to build on the existing natural resources inventory, which I think probably a lot of you are familiar with. It's completed in 2019, and CLC worked in collaboration with the county and I believe the ENC to establish that plan. The county adopted it, and some of it lives on the county website currently. Our process for developing such a plan, what we really are hoping is that it can be representative and meet the needs of each community in the county and the county as a whole. And we're looking for a lot of public input as we go about developing this plan. So both from just individuals in individual communities, from towns and municipal officials, and hopefully from the county government as well. And so I don't know, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with sort of open space planning work in general, but our process will be the hiring of two different consultants who will help us achieve two different sort of tasks. One is to really solicit and get that public feedback. So through a number of different channels. One would be just sort of general input from community events, an online survey, and pushing that out to as many people in the county as we can. And the second would be an external committee that we're still in process of developing membership of. And it's really sort of in its earliest stages. So we're hoping to get feedback about the makeup of that committee as we start this process. And what that committee's role will be is to really guide the identification of conservation priorities in the county and the drafting of our plan so that we can ensure it's not just a CLC plan, but it's really a plan that speaks to the needs of our entire county. So two consultants one would lead that sort of public feedback portion. The other would do the geospatial analysis. So in the NRI, we hired some GIS consultants to collect a bunch of data around the natural resources in Columbia County, whether it's the soils, the forested lands, water, the public lands open for recreation, so on and so forth. So they would do a similar process, update that document, and then using the public feedback that we get from the external committee and from our public survey and events, create priorities for conservation. And CLC would use those to direct our further land protection work, and we hope that towns and municipalities could also use that as they go about different planning processes, zoning, so on and so forth, all of which you all know more about than I do. And so what we'll end up with, hopefully, is an open space plan that identifies some really core areas where conservation is appropriate and supported, and that outline sort of different actions that both CLC, other conservation organizations in the county, but also towns and municipalities can follow. By no means is it meant to be a prescriptive plan, rather sort of an informational plan that identifies some common priorities for all of us in the county to strive towards. And so, like I said, right now we're in the very early stages of developing the plan. We're looking at a couple of different options for consultants, but we're really eager to get in front of the county government to hopefully get some support from you all and some buy-in and engagement. We want county government to have a voice in the development of the plan, so it speaks to some of your individual needs and your individual town needs. I'm also hoping that we can get this plan in front of the board of supervisors. I know in the NRI process, CLC worked with the EMC to do that and eventually got in front of the entire board. So I think we're here to listen to you, and you can tell us the best way to go about that and what you think is the most appropriate channel. And we're also hoping that the county can give some feedback on the plan itself as we move towards actually drafting it. So, you know, feedback about priorities that we identify, the draft of the plan, the actions within the plan, so that we don't end up with a plan that's not supported by county government and towns around our county. So that's sort of the very brief introduction. I'm happy to kind of open it up to discussion or questions.
I have comment, and I appreciate your efforts on this. I'm Supervisor Town of Stuyvesant, and Stuyvesant probably has about 35% of its total land mass in a conservation easement of some sort or other.
Sure.
Whether it's CLC, Scenic Hudson, New York State, something. So what we've struggled with over the years, and years ago, I tried to do a zoning amendment where I wanted those processes to come through the planning board so that we could track them somehow. I did work with Scenic Hudson years ago to try and identify some of the layers so that we could get it on a zoning map. But as we all get more familiar with being able to use GIS and get things digitized, I think this is a huge asset to the communities to be able to have access to that. Right now, people can go and conserve development rights, and we don't even get known about it sometimes, you know, but yet from a planning perspective, our planning board should be aware of where they are. And I would hope that the agency that's doing the development right conservation, you know, does look at the local zoning to see what was planned for that area. You know, we've seen some I get it to this a people's choice, but you know, but I have seen times where, you know, we had an area that was set for high density development and then it gets conserved. So then you have to move that, you know. So long-term planning is good, but how can we continue to get all of the information, not just from your organization, but from others, so that all the municipalities know this is a parcel that is conserved, you know, and why, you know, a little bit more. So anything that you could do like that, I think would be helpful. I'm not sure how we get it done, but good time, I think, to bring it up. So.
Do you have a map of or an inventory of conserved parcels?
We do, yeah.
Would Scenic Hudson and New York State have an equivalent? Would it be possible to create such a document?
I did it for Stuyvesant a number of years ago, you know, but yes,
there's an existing inventory of all conserved lands from organizations who will share that data, CLC being one of them. And of course, we're always happy to share with towns and hope it's a two-way street. That's kind of information we're hoping to get from individual towns, so that when we go make this plan, you're not inadvertently creating tension and conflict in places where, you know, it was set for one thing and we changed that use or something.
We're just kicking off doing a comprehensive plan review this year, so it might be good timing, so we could all work together.
Beautiful.
But, yeah.
Part of the inspiration for it is town of Chatham went through a planning process where they identified farmlands in the town where they want protected.
Right.
And looking at that, they were ranked, and we want to use that then to guide our work. Much of our conservation to date has been very reactive, where someone will come to us and say they want to conserve the land.
Right.
We want to flip that in regards to, okay, here's what the town has told us they want protected.
Yeah.
And now we can engage those landowners, and if it's actually a purchase of the development rights on those properties or something else, it's more where the town has actually instructed us, these are your marching orders that we want to see happen from the town perspective.
So it'd be a coordinated effort instead of a one-sided effort.
Exactly.
Sounds helpful. Anybody else?
I appreciate that you're doing this, and I like that you sort of flagged all these different opportunities for us to get feedback. So certainly let me know when you want specific feedback, or if you want me to share it with people. And I'm excited to get engaged.
And this is the very front end of the process. We just got the grants, and we are looking to come to you now at this front end before we've done anything, and make sure you're aware of what we're doing and also get that buy-in, as opposed to what we've sometimes done in the past is develop a report, bring it in and put it on the table, and says, please adopt this. This is where we want to directly engage with the process all along and have it be something where it's a shared vision plan, not just something that we did.
And I'm happy to see that continue to go through county government. You know, I mean, I know that before, you're right, we did the inventory plan through EMC, but then they came to county government, you know.
You keep us updated, that's the whole thing.
a lot easier for us to work with you like that.
Yes.
Here's the plan, now we gotta go through the study and understand it.
Yep.
How long do you think that it will take to do this?
Our timeline right now is about a year,
About a year.
give or take.
So just like Stuyvesant Canaan is also going to do a strategic plan review this year, and so this is the timing for this is good for us. And I, like Michael, I really appreciate that you identified the opportunities, the many opportunities that, in which we could participate. Because sometimes you say, how, can you help? And we're scratching our head trying to figure out how we can help. Now you told us how. So, thanks.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you. Appreciate it.
Wow, he's got 3 minutes to spare.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought there'd be more questions, right?
I have a question. Put in the bank next time.
Thank you again. All right, thank you.
Thanks for waiting.
Veterans is up next.
Literally.
How is everybody?
Very good.
How are
How are
you?
you? They're around the edges, but
Did you
Tim is.
Did you get wet coming in?
A little
Everyone
bit.
else got wet.
Yes, a little bit.
Just-
Luckily, it was parking.
Slow down a little bit?
No, I just hopped out and ran.
Yes.
First of all, I would like to just thank everybody for your support in this whole process. Then my first resolution, I request permission to appoint Anneli Poland to the deputy director position, effective 7/13/24. As I was the previous deputy and I've been promoted to director. Anneli is a very great asset to the office. She's been shadowing me, she's fully accredited like I am. So that is my request
I'll move it.
with that. Thank you.
Second, all in favor? Opposed? Carried.
We're gonna kind of do this a little backwards because we have to do your vote as
Okay.
well.
I was gonna
say.
Should have done that first.
Yeah, we should have.
That's all right.
Are you next then?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, this is to fill the
Yes.
veterans director.
Okay,
I'll move it.
All right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
thank you.
Now you're appointed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For keeping us honest.
For programs, I already know the paperwork because I've been doing, a little over a year and a half. I was Gary's deputy. But, you know, there's changes of some of the forms, just updates, like updated forms and everything. That's all that is. For visitors, we had Lieutenant Governor, Delgado visited Monday. And we took him for a tour and showed him the food pantry and the Dwyer room. And he was very impressed with our operation. And Matt, I will make sure to let you know next time. The food pantry has had about 50 plus clients in the past 16 hours period in the week. The food pantry is getting low on stuff, unfortunately, but we're still continuing to help everybody as we can because they've been very busy. Honor of vet, I'm on the committee and all slots for the year have been filled. And then the last week of Gary's, last week Gary was there. We had numerous veterans and widows came in and we had a little retirement party for him. His wife and him came down and then we took a few pictures, had cake and sent him on his way.
Very good. You say you need food?
We need food, and if there's anything specific, I would suggest calling our office and asking Patsy.
Okay, so what we're
Because-
doing, our town is dropped off. We've had, for some reason, it's gone from 15, 20 to a visit to 5. So we've had actually,
Okay,
staff, gotta be someplace we can give it to,
okay,
get out there. So I'll have a contact you.
all right. I know,
There, coordinate if you need stuff, we can bring it to you.
okay, I know we'd be very grateful for anything.
What you might also do is send Kelly, an email letting, to send out to all the supervisors,
Right.
because a lot of towns are having community days now. It'd be very easy to set up a table or a basket or a booth to the side for donations to the food pantry.
All right,
But if you send the email, Kelly will distribute it.
okay. Thank you for that.
50 people in 4 days.
Yeah.
In 16 hours. That's a lot of people.
Yeah. It's unfortunate to have a food pantry for veterans, but it's good that they know about it. A lot of them, at first, a lot were very proud, like too proud to come, which I understand, but it's there. We have household items, clothes, personal hygiene stuff. We have a local farm that donates meat and just donations. Basically what it's run on.
I think the big sign in the window is also
That has helped. Yeah.
good advertisement.
Yes, as soon as that was put out on the window
Yeah.
a lot, I noticed it was a lot more people were stopping.
Yeah.
It's visible.
Yes, yep. Do you have anything?
Dad,
All right.
the best.
Anybody for the committee?
Thank you very much.
Big shoes to
Nobody?
follow.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Michael, you're on the
All
docket.
right. Well, thanks. I think after we've been discussing sort of the importance of animal welfare in the public safety meeting for a few different meetings, I wanted to bring this to the committee. I was telling the chairman earlier today, sort of the backstory behind this resolution is that California had passed an animal welfare law around pigs and farms, and sort of like some major agricultural businesses in the Midwest had sort of put forward this resolution through an Iowa House rep that would, in order to sort of strike down the California law, it basically says that you can't, it basically limits the amount that local and state governments can create local laws about producing products, agricultural products. And it would strike down, I think in resolutions, there's like hundreds of laws, including in New York State, there's like laws about like how horses are transported. And horses can be turned to horse meat. There's like, it would strike down New York State laws about horses. So it's a pretty dangerous thing, both in terms of animal welfare and the environment, but also in terms of home rule. So I included some whereases that are sort of citing other people. So I also included like a letter from the National Association of Counties that it was co-signed by them and the National League of Cities, and then one other sort of organization that's similar, basically just coming at it from a home rule law, being like, look, local solutions. You want state and local governments to be able to be the ones to make these kinds of things about how we use our land, and you don't really want the federal government involved with those kinds of things. And then I also included some really striking things from other people. The Harvard University study cited about how the EATS Act, if enacted, would really strike down a lot of different things, including things for horses intended for in-state slaughter, such as laws requiring minimum welfare or transport standards. So to the extent that we care about horse animal welfare, this law would strike down a lot of things. There's a sort of disturbing quote from the Humane Society. The EATS Act could also destroy hundreds of other protections against terrible cruelties like abuse of dogs and puppy mills, killing of animals for the wildlife trade, and painful procedures used on animals for cosmetic testing. So it's a pretty dangerous law that a lot of people have come out against. Right now, the thinking is that it'll likely, if it's passed, it would be included in the Farm Bill, which was supposed to be passed last year, and because of sort of dysfunction in Congress, it's like now potentially going to be passed this year. And the Farm Bill is one of those things that includes literally billions of dollars worth of funding. It's really critical for a lot of things around farms, but also does things for rural development, for SNAP and food assistance. And it's also just a time when you have these mega bills to just kind of pop in all this other stuff. And so there's some risk that this bill would sort of, or some version of this bill would be included in the Farm Bill. And there's a lot of different debates right now about whether the Farm Bill will pass at all, but there is a push to sort of get it passed in the next couple of months, which means that things could move really rapidly. And it's just a time when like a lot of things don't get a lot of look because people are going to be arguing about food assistance, and meanwhile, a lot of stuff gets stuffed in. So this is like an
Like a
opportunity.
state budget.
It's like that.
It's full of
It's like
policy.
that.
The farm bill is really the food stamp bill,
Yeah.
Right.
because it's what, 80% or 85%
Yeah.
is
Yes.
90, big number.
Right. So that's going to be the thing that most people are talking about. But it's also just one of those things where Congress doesn't pass a lot of bills. So it's also I think it's their chance to kind of stuff everything in. there's a lot of things, there's a lot of moving parts. Our Congress member is serves on the Ag Committee, so we have sort of like a more influence than some parts of the country. And so this is a place for us. I know that we've passed a lot of resolutions in the past about home rural. We've also been talking about animal welfare. And this seems like an important opportunity for us to say, look, we want state and local control, we care about animal welfare. This is really like too big a swing for the federal government to get involved in. So I thought it was an important opportunity for us to sort of take a stance for this.
So I spoke to our congressman's aide today,
Yeah.
Alex Portman, and mentioned that, you know, something like this might be coming, and he did not seem aware of it. I don't know if he did on your call, and was grateful that we flagged it and we're bringing it to his attention.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing it, Michael, and I took a quick look at this, but I certainly can't get my head wrapped around all of the intent of all of it. So I would ask if you don't think it's completely urgent to just table it until we could study it a little bit more and hear from our congressman, or do some more reading on this, because I usually support home rule, but yet I can't really get my head wrapped around this. Tim, do you have any direct?
It's probably a good idea, but
I-
token.
I don't know, but if we could table it for a month and see if we could figure it out a little bit better. I'm not opposed to it, really. I just don't know
When
enough
would they
about it.
pass that? Like, when?
I don't think they're gonna do anything for the summer.
No.
I-
No, but in the fall, that's what Tim brought up, with the funding for the food stamp program, that's what's gonna drive all of this. And also all the funding for USDA, I think, is in this farm bill as well. And USDA now is tied to housing and all kinds of stuff. So, it's just,
Michael's right, they stuff a lot of stuff in these
Right.
bills, that's how they do it. But
I'm not saying, as I said to you earlier, I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm not saying I'm for it at this point. I just like
It's
to
probably a good idea.
some more information just to, and as Brenda said, I reached out to the congressman's office as well, just to get a little more insight.
okay, to be clear, I didn't reach out. I was on a call for another purpose. I don't want you to think that I reached out for this purpose. Yeah.
We didn't have any idea about it
We
either.
both talked with the same.
Yeah, exactly. But I didn't want to get ahead of ourselves. So, I have less issue with the content. I mean, I don't find any of the content objectionable, but I do respect the fact that people might want to have a longer look at this. But what I would appreciate knowing is what pieces we'd like to have a look at, so that if we need to supply additional information, we're in the position to do so.
yeah, I'm not pointing to any one thing from me. I gave it a quick read and it's like, wow, there's a lot here that is over my head. I mean, we're not usually trying to tell the federal government what to do. I mean, we do sometimes do resolutions telling the state what to do, but I'm, this has got ramifications, I'm sure, across the entire country that we can't grasp. And again, I do appreciate your point, and I think you're right that, if we feel like it, we should talk to our congressman. That's how this works. But on the other hand, I don't think federal government gives a shit.
What I was able to read today about it was the fact that to the people that are proposing this, it's a free trade issue. So whether we agree with that or not, that's,
Well, where I grew up in North Carolina, and it's true that I've been in New York for 45 years, so I don't know if that counts anymore. But hog farms were run by independent farmers, small independent farmers, and now they're factory farms. And the cyclical nature of this is that the small hog farmers are having a very difficult time to come back now because of rules like this.
And I think the large farmers are having difficulties too,
But people want safe meat, and they want meat that is humanely slaughtered, and they want to reduce the carbon footprint. People's expectations about the food they eat is very different now.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why this interests me, because I actually went to 2 hog parks when I was in North Carolina because I have a friend who's a restaurant owner and somebody else who just buys a half a hog to put in his freezer every year. He wanted to make sure he's getting good meat. So I do think that this has a real place. And I agree with you. I'm a little bit uncomfortable wandering out into a wider pond, but I think this has local implications that are important to us.
I don't disagree. I'd just like to have some time to do some more reading on it.
I
I think we got lots
of
of time. I would venture to guess that the majority of people sitting around this table don't know
Right.
everything or.
No,
Yeah, I mean, I think
Anything.
so.
when you
Okay.
brought it to our attention, we can study it. So we're gonna table, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think I am excited about all of us getting more informed about it, and I appreciate that. And then I guess in the spirit of being informed, I also think it's worth having a conversation about the pros and cons. So I'm fine with tabling it. I don't have a crystal ball about how the house is gonna move. These things kind of get stuffed into committee, they move on,
Yes,
so,
it doesn't matter what we say.
right.
Right.
But I guess I think the point around, is it free trade or not, I think it is an important distinction, and I think the risk is that there is, I mean, most agriculture in terms of dollar amounts is controlled by a handful of industries. You look at the meat industry, a handful of companies control all the meat packing. And then you kind of go through the different farm industries, there's like the fertilizer industry, the pesticide industry, there's a handful of companies that kind of control everything. And do we want national standards set to what benefits them? And it is free trade, right? They say, we want to set the rules, and it's kind of a race to the bottom, right? What they're saying is don't set any rules that protect animal welfare, protect the environment, protect small farmers, protect local businesses, because we want to set the rules, and that's free trade. And I think that probably does benefit a handful of corporations that are mostly based in the Midwest. Or we can think about, I think for most farmers around the country, and certainly farmers in our district, the rules that those guys are setting are not going to benefit our local businesses. So I think to some extent, I think we would benefit from having local control. We want the power to set local rules and statewide rules. In essence, that is the essence of the EATS Act. EATS Act is saying, we think when it comes to agriculture, the federal government should set the rules, and who's going to have the most influence at the federal government level is going to be big ag. And so it is a free trade issue. And I guess in my mind, it's like, that's not what we want. I think we want a home rule issue, where if California wants to set California rules, like, let them. And if, New Hampshire wants to set New Hampshire rules, let them. And if Midwest wants to set Midwest rules, like, let them. And in New York State, we're going to have some rules about, like, and I think if you go into things like disease and pest control, we really don't want the federal government setting rules, which might be really hyper regional. So in my mind, there is like a higher calling for us to say, we don't really want to wade into federal issues, but this is actually a local issue. We want this is saying we don't want the federal government wading into what is a local issue. So I just want to put that out there. And I also appreciate that people want to take their time and think about it and talk to the farmers.
Could we also share it with the entire board,
Yeah.
whether you or Kelly do it, so that we get some input from everybody? If there's, I think there's some things here that we're not thinking of, and I don't have any specific complaints, but.
And the other thing I'd like to do is compare it to the right to farm law, because I think that we've already started to think about how farming works in our county.
Right.
And I think this would actually support some of the work in the right to farm law. So,
Yeah, we certainly support home rule most of the time, I get it, but.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Mike. Okay, next up is Fair Healthy Filter.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and I don't roll away here. Just to give you some idea of what I'm facing or what I'm hearing is with regard to rent increases, and I think a lot of that has to do with the prices that real estate investors are paying for these properties, and the return on their investment that they're looking for. Commonly, that would be about 10 or 12%, which is certainly much higher than what that money would earn, let's say, in a CD or something like that. So I think a lot of these, the cost of these properties is passed on to the individuals. I have a situation right now that a 93-year-old woman received, this was a change of hands of property, an LLC bought this property, and she is faced with a rent increase of $415 a month on her limited income, which means she's got to be looking for something else. We are, as I had mentioned many times before, we are in what's called a free market rent area, where what, the law says right now is that the rent can be whatever the landlord and tenant agree upon. We don't have any stabilization or rent controls like perhaps, New York City. And so these are the kind of things that are happening. I'm getting, many calls from individuals where, as I say, properties are changing hands, or they look at what other people are getting for rents, let's say in the Hudson area, for instance, hard to find a 2-bedroom for under $2,000, that type of thing. So anyone that was paying, let's say, $1,000 or $1,200 before, it looks like, the market is demanding more, so they're passing this on to the individuals who really can't afford them. So in that, where are they going to go? Section 8, I can tell you that Section 8 in this, now we have the Hudson Housing Authority that handles Section 8 in Hudson and the 12534 zip code. They are taking applications, but they have a 12-month, at least a 12-month waiting list, and they are not issuing any new housing choice vouchers so that these people can go out and try to find something that is within their financial means or meets their needs. So that is difficult. Now Saratoga Springs, they have a central office that also serves Columbia County. Right now, they have a 2 to 3 year waiting list, which is certainly doesn't benefit folks that have to go out looking for something that's affordable. And they are once again too taking applications, but they are not issuing any new housing choice vouchers.
Are the dates on the vouchers being extended so that you don't lose your voucher expires and you go to the
Yes,
bottom
yeah,
of the list?
you can extend them, but you have to apply for an extension. I believe that if you don't find anything within 60 days, that you have to apply for an extension. I was talking to management of one senior housing facility, and they confirmed that because they just had a Section 8 individual move into senior housing that had been on a waiting list for over 2 years. So,
I know Bob Gibson's been doing a lot of work with his clients for extensions on their vouchers.
pardon me.
Bob Gibson has been doing, his
Oh,
caseworkers
yeah.
have been doing a lot of work for voucher extensions.
Mhm. Good. Yeah, I would like to talk to Bob about that. In senior housing, not unusual to have as many as, this is a little hard to determine because it's not like, Section 8 where you have a waiting list that has a time frame. You're waiting, the waiting list in senior housing, when folks move into senior housing, what they're, it's probably the last move that they're going to make. And so these apartments don't become available. You can't put any time frame on it. It's really when, someone might go into a nursing home or perhaps pass away, something might become available. But a senior housing, I would say, probably most of the senior housing is looking at waiting lists that might average about 35 on a waiting list. I've seen them as low as 15 on a waiting list, many 20, but on a waiting list. But there are some out there that might have 50 or even 40. I was talking to one manager of a facility. They have 40 on a waiting list, and they only have 28 apartments.
They're 500, how long does it take?
They could actually, cover. And I did make a typo up there too. That should be who is covered there in the eviction law. But anyway, so the affordable housing that you normally see, subsidized housing between Section 8 and senior housing is just, it's backed up very, very severely. Now, some of you may have heard about the New York State good cause eviction law, which, we've always had reasons that we gave for, to evict people. But one of the new things in the eviction law is what they call unreasonable or unconscionable rent controls. And, but who is covered? I can tell you who isn't covered. Anybody living in a condo or a co-op or a mobile home park is not covered by this good cause eviction law. And the reason why mobile homes are not is because they already have a law that limits rent increases. In a mobile home park, you can't increase the lot rent more than 3% per year, but or the ceiling would be 6%. Then they have to, the park owner has to justify why he's going to 6% based on, let's say, income and expense statements and increased taxes, insurance, whatever the case may be. Now, any building that, any residential building that was built prior to 2009 is covered unless anybody living in a building that was built prior to 2009, living in a building is covered if that building has not been rehabbed since recently or whatever, then it is exempt. Now, the state law says that the state law says that the income or that the rent increase cannot exceed 5%, 3. To go back to that, but it can't exceed the inflation rate plus 5% or 10%, whichever is less. And the entire state would be bound by that type of increase. A building that is owner occupied is not covered. So you could have 4 rental units, but if the owner is in one of those rental units, that would not cover or be covered under this particular law. The problem with it is, though, New York State, when they promulgated this law, they said that it only would apply to any owners who own more than 10 units. So that was kind of confusing because if you look at the state law, there would be very few, residential properties that would be covered in our area because if it's under 10, they call that a small business and they're not covered. But the law does allow for that component to be adjusted by individual townships, cities, villages to say, now Albany opted into this and they will cover anything that's not owner occupied, even if they only own 1 unit. So that definitely would affect us if we were to do something like that. So it is a pretty complex law, but here again, like the mobile home law, that threshold can be challenged by the owner by showing, financial statements that would, that the owner would feel would warrant the increase. And that's gonna come into the courts. The judges are the ones that are gonna say, well, this is justified or it isn't justified. So it's gonna probably result in a lot of cases going to court. So it's quite a complex law, and when the state wrote this law, they said it would affect New York people who were in the free market area and weren't in rent control of stabilized areas. So, when they look at New York, they say, well, it's not uncommon for you to have, maybe own more than 10 units. So it's pretty complicated. It doesn't affect us unless we opt into it. And the towns and villages can opt into it.
Does the county have to opt into it?
Hmm?
Does the county as a whole have to?
The way the law looks to me is that they say towns and villages can opt into it. So it doesn't sound like the whole county, but it sounds like the towns and villages would have to do it individually.
But to Kelly's point, does it say municipalities or does it specifically say towns and villages? Towns and villages.
I believe it specifically says town.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't say cities, town and villages, but I'm sure it applies to cities because, I know it applies to cities because Albany was the first one to opt in, and Kingston, and I think Newburgh, I think Ithaca is thinking about it. So, there are cities that, Albany has already opted to it. But I can see it to be quite cumbersome because, when you look at New York City, they have a department within the city that would review all of these things, the age of the building, the rent increases, review financial statements if the tenant challenges it. And I would assume that if it goes to court, the judge would have to have some knowledge of reviewing financial statements, or at least get information from someone that would, be able to provide that expertise. So,
See, a lot of towns and villages don't have the manpower to
And
have.
resources.
Yeah.
Steve, do we know how many I know we can look it up in the census, but do we know how many rental units we have in Columbia County?
I don't, but, this is probably a little off the subject, but naturally, as you may know, that anyone that's paying more than 30% of their income is considered rent burden and burden.
I figured, right, if it's about 10 units or more, right, I guess it's a pretty big threshold for the county. If you had the most conservative version of good cause, having to own 10 units or more, I would imagine that's a pretty small minority of the total
It
units.
is a small minority, and I can think of one facility that would actually, one facility in Greenport that would actually affect and possibly benefit the tenant.
You in Chatham, right? So there's some larger places in Chatham.
Pardon me?
There's senior housings in Chapel.
Well,
but no
but any subsidized housing wouldn't come into the picture. Any kind of already subsidized housing, which would be your senior housing,
This is just another way to make people fund somebody else's apartment.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
It's another way to get somebody to fund somebody else's rent, If the landlord can't recoup their investment, then somebody else has got to pay.
Bill, I got a question.
Yeah.
Between the town, it says towns and villages can opt out. So
Opt in.
opt in.
they can opt in, yeah.
So our town, does our town supersede the village? if the village is still in the town, or they, because of the entity, it's up to them?
The way I read it, it said towns and villages, but, you know, are there village ordinances that would be different from, let's say, Philmont, would they have an ordinance that would be different from, Florida?
Okay.
You'd have to ask your town.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I figure it's the most aggressive would supersede. So like if Clapper, you know, like if you have like we're gonna do every 10 unit buildings only. And then Philmont was like, well, we're gonna do 3 units. You would, for Philmont, like
Right.
theirs would supersede.
Yeah, but I wouldn't think that you would tell Philmont what to do.
well,
No,
Philmont,
well,
like,
you could try.
Philmont like
I'm
this.
just saying is,
Yeah,
they're individual entities.
Correct, I
Right.
understand that.
If Black Rat cast it, Philmont's gonna say, okay.
We're
Like-
separate.
Well, we're not involved. Right.
like Richardson Hall and, Philmont Terrace, they don't come under the law because they're subsidized.
Right.
So,
So when you said that, I think when you're opting in for the 10 units or more rule. But could you have a more stringent law? Could you say 3 units or more or 5 units or more?
yes, well, as I said, Albany has gotten down to 1 unit.
So you
If
can't-
you own 1 unit and you don't occupy it, that could be subject to the Albany law.
So they're giving you the ability to do a local law within certain.
But I think what Michael was saying, if you go with the state, if you went with the state, you know, you'd be less apt to be dealing with a lot of,
Right.
a lot of problems. Well, not problems, but a lot of, you know, challenges, so to
Somebody
speak.
comes and you know, place you do it, you know.
But here again, now, if you own 10 units in, let's say, Freeport, and 1 unit in Flopper, that's more than this, that's more than 10. It can be, you know, that's be not, another thing you'd have to determine is, you know, okay, now we're dealing with this 10 units, so he's exempt, but does he own another unit elsewhere, which is gonna put him in a category where he's not exempt?
So you're just bringing this to our attention. You're not asking us to do anything.
No, actually, I'm just letting you know, because we are having a lot of, you know, people, I get a lot of people calling about rent increases, but also people call about this good, you know, this good cause eviction, because they know the law. But presently, that doesn't, we're, you know, Columbia County, no place in Columbia County would have to deal with it, unless they opt in, unless the town or the village.
The
opts in.
Office for the Aging, Brenda, is the one, did you get the email from Office from the Aging?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They were the ones that brought it up. We actually had a case in our court. And they brought it up at the court, and it was the attorney from OFA that was inquiring as to whether the town, and that prompted the whole inquiry to Mr. Fisher.
But there is also, yeah, like too, I get some calls from other people who have, you know, a little bit of knowledge about this. And then I have to explain to them that we are in a free market rent area and we're not covered. Because New York State specifically says, if you're in a free market area where there's no rent control and rent stabilization, the landlord and the tenant agree upon the rent, and the landlord says, I'm going up $400. And the tenant says, well, I can't afford it. The landlord should probably start some sort of an eviction proceeding or, you know.
The case that we had, without getting too specific, was that they were evicting the person because the person paid part rent and the other, he was doing,
Maintenance.
maintenance for the other part of the rent.
Yeah, well, another thing too, I'm glad you brought that up, Kelly, because where, an employee is receiving housing from the employer, that's exempt, so that's not covered under this. So let me glad you brought that up.
Okay. Board satisfied?
And it's interesting 'cause it's- yeah.
Thank you, Govt. Appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah, let's try to clear it up. So,
Thank you.
Anybody from the board have anything you'd like to discuss? Need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
See ya. Pretty simple. Huh? Nice
Thank
seeing everybody's smiling face.